Story number 1, Parking Favor. I lent Derek my parking pass on a Tuesday afternoon in the break room. He worked somewhere in radiology, one of those departments I only passed on the way to the elevator. We had maybe spoken 3 times in the 2 years I had been at the hospital. He said he forgot his pass at home and asked if he could borrow mine just for the day. It seemed reasonable. I told him sure, and he thanked me. And I assumed I would see it back on my desk by the end of the week. 3 days went by and I heard nothing. I did not want to be the person who hounded someone over something so small, so I waited. I paid the daily parking fee out of pocket and told myself he probably just kept forgetting to drop it off. On Thursday evening, I took the stairwell down to level 3 where I had been parking temporarily, and I smelled stale cigarette smoke clinging to the concrete. When I rounded the corner to the landing, Derek was there, leaning against the railing with his phone in his hand. He looked up and smiled like we had run into each other by accident. He said hey, and I said hey back, and I kept walking. My heart was beating faster than it should have been, but I told myself that was stupid. People smoked in stairwells all the time. On Friday evening, he was standing next to my car, not near it, next to it. Close enough that I had to stop walking when I was still several feet away. He was holding my parking pass in his hand, turning it over between his fingers. He said he wanted to return it in person, that he felt bad for keeping it so long. I said it was fine and held out my hand. He stepped forward and gave it to me, and his fingers brushed mine longer than they needed to. He asked if I always parked on 3, and I said no, not always. He nodded slowly, still smiling. I got in my car and locked the doors immediately. He stood there watching me back out. The next Monday I parked on level 5 and left at 4:30 instead of 5. When I came down the stairwell, he was waiting on the 5th floor landing. He was not smoking this time. He said he saw my car earlier and figured I would be getting off soon. He asked if I needed help carrying anything. I said no, I was fine. He walked with me to my car anyway, talking about how the parking garage was not safe at night, how there had been break-ins recently. I had not heard about any break-ins. I thanked him and got in my car, and he stood there with his hands in his pockets, watching me leave again. I started varying my schedule. I left at 4:15 on Tuesday and parked on level 2. He was there within minutes, coming out of the stairwell just as I reached my car. On Wednesday I stayed until 6 and parked on 4. He was leaning against the concrete pillar near my car when I arrived, scrolling on his phone like he had been waiting a while. He always acted casual. He always smiled. He always said something that would sound perfectly normal if I tried to repeat it to someone else. On Thursday I went to HR. I sat across from a woman named Angela, who listened with her hands folded on the desk. I told her a co-worker had been waiting by my car after shifts and it made me uncomfortable. She asked if he had threatened me. I said no. She asked if he had touched me. I said no. She asked what exactly he had done, and I tried to explain the feeling of it. The way he was always just there, but it sounded thin even to me. She said she could arrange a security escort to my car for the rest of the week as a precaution. I said that would help. Security walked me out on Thursday and Friday. Both nights, Derek was nowhere. The guard was polite but clearly busy, talking into his radio about other things the whole way down. On Monday evening, I waited by the HR desk at 5, but no one came. I called the security extension and a different guard answered. He said they were short, staffed tonight, and he could not spare anyone for escorts. He suggested I park near the entrance or leave with a coworker. I said okay and hung up. I walked down to level 3 alone. The stairwell smelled like cigarette smoke again. My hands were shaking when I pushed open the door to the parking level, but Derek was not there. I walked quickly to my car, unlocked it, got in. I locked the doors and sat there for a moment, letting my breathing slow. I felt stupid for being so afraid. Nothing had actually happened. The next day, Angela from HR called me and said my parking pass had been turned into the lost and found. I told her I had it back already. She said this was a duplicate, that it had been sitting in a drawer in the radiology break room, and someone turned it in yesterday. I went down to pick it up, confused. When she handed it to me, I saw my name printed on the front in the hospital's label format. I turned it over. My home address was written on the back in blue pen. My handwriting. I stared at it for several seconds before I remembered. When I first registered for parking 2 years ago, they told me to write my address on the back in case the pass was ever lost. I had done it and never thought about it again. Derek had my pass for 3 days. I stood there in the HR office, holding the pass, trying to understand how it had ended up in the radiology break room. Angela asked if everything was okay. I said yes. I walked back to my desk and sat down. I opened the staff directory on my computer and looked up his name. Derek Pullman, radiology technician, started 8 months ago. I closed the directory. That evening, I asked my coworker Lisa if she could walk out with me. She said sure. We took the elevator down together, talking about nothing. When we stepped out onto level 3, Derek was standing near the stairwell exit, smoking. He looked at me, then at Lisa, and nodded. We walked past him to my car. Lisa said goodnight and headed toward her own car on the other side of the level. I got in and locked the doors. Derek was still standing there, 30 feet away, facing me. He was not looking at his phone. He was just standing there. I started the engine and backed out. He did not move. I drove home and parked on the street instead of the driveway. I sat in my car for a long time, looking at the houses on my block. The lights were on in my living room because I had left them on that morning. Everything looked normal. I went inside and locked the door behind me. I checked the back door and the windows. I stood in my kitchen, still holding my keys, and I thought about the fact that he had known where I lived since the first day. Since before he started waiting by my car. Since before any of it. I have been leaving with Lisa every night since then. I have not seen him in the parking garage in 4 days. But yesterday, I saw his car parked on my street when I came home. A blue sedan, 2 houses down. I did not stop. I kept driving to the grocery store and sat in the parking lot there until it was dark. When I came back, the car was gone. I do not know what he wants. I do not know if he is still watching. I just know that I wrote my address on the back of that pass myself, in my own handwriting, and I gave it to him. Story number 2: Boat Launch. I arrived at the boat launch a little after 5 in the morning, when the sky was still that flat gray that comes before real dawn. Early spring in northern Minnesota means the ice is gone, but the tourists have not arrived yet. And I wanted to catch the fog lifting off the water with my camera. I do landscape work for outdoor magazines, the kind of shots that need perfect stillness, and I prefer working alone. The gravel lot was empty. Maybe 3 dozen spaces, all vacant. The painted lines barely visible under a winter's worth of dirt and pine needles. I parked near the middle, backed in so I could load my kayak from the tailgate without wrestling it around. The air smelled like thawed earth and wet wood from the dock planks that had rotted over winter. I was pulling my dry bag from the truck bed when I heard tires on gravel. A pickup, dark blue or maybe black in the dim light, rolled into the lot and came straight toward me. I stepped aside, assuming the driver needed the concrete ramp. It is the only proper launch on this part of the lake. But instead of stopping near the water, the truck pulled into the space directly next to mine. The passenger side, close enough that I could not have opened my door if I had wanted to. There were 36 empty spaces. I told myself it was a habit thing. Some people always park in the same spot. I went back to unloading my kayak, trying not to look over, but I could hear both doors open. 2 men got out. I could see them in my peripheral vision, just standing there beside the truck. Neither of them moved toward the tailgate. They were not unloading a boat. I kept working, sliding the kayak off the roof rack, setting it on the gravel. My paddle was bungeed to the thwarts. I focused on untying the knots, keeping my hands steady. One of the men walked closer. I could hear his boots on the gravel. He stopped near my driver's side door. I glanced over. He was crouched down, holding his phone low, angled toward my rear license plate. The screen lit his face from below. He was not pretending to tie his shoe or check his tire. He was just photographing my plate. The other man stood by their truck, watching me. I finished untying the paddle and lifted the kayak by the cockpit rim. It is only 40 pounds, fiberglass, easy to carry. I walked it down to the water without saying anything. My heart was going faster than it should have been. I told myself they were fishermen, checking which vehicles belonged to which boats. Maybe worried about theft. People do that. It was not inherently strange, but they still had not unloaded a boat. I set the kayak in the shallows and went back for my dry bag and camera case. The man by my door had stood up. Both of them were just standing there now, not talking, not moving. I could smell diesel exhaust mixing with the wet wood smell from the dock. Their truck was still running. I loaded my gear into the kayak, pulled on my life vest, and pushed off. The water was cold enough that I could feel it through the hull. I paddled out 20 feet, then 50, then 100, and when I looked back they were still standing at the edge of the gravel, right where the lot met the water, motionless, watching me disappear into the fog. I told myself I was being paranoid. I paddled north, into the thickest part of the fog, where the shoreline vanished and the water turned gray and flat. This was what I had come for. I stopped paddling and let the kayak drift, lifting my camera from the dry bag. The light was starting to improve. I fired off a few shots, trying to focus on the composition, the way the fog layered itself in bands of different density. Then I heard the motor. Outboard, maybe 15 horsepower, coming from the direction of the launch. I lowered the camera. A boat emerged from the fog, maybe 200 feet behind me. The same blue or black pickup truck had a trailer, and now the boat was in the water. I could see 2 figures inside. I started paddling west, toward a stretch of shoreline I knew had a hiking trail. The motor sound changed pitch. I looked back. The boat had turned west too. I paddled faster, angling northwest, toward a narrow inlet. The motor followed. Not closing the distance, just maintaining it. Always 200 feet back, sometimes a little more, never less. I stopped paddling and drifted. The motor idled down. The boat drifted too. My hands were shaking. I put the paddle across the cockpit and tried to think. The lake is big, maybe 4 miles across, with state forest on 3 sides. There are cabins on the south shore, but they would all be empty this time of year. The ranger station was on the east side, 2 miles inland from a public beach. I could get there on foot if I beached the kayak. I turned hard east and paddled as fast as I could, not looking back, just listening to the motor rev up behind me. My shoulders burned. The fog was thinning as the sun came up, and I could see the far shoreline now, a dark line of pines. I aimed for a gap in the trees where I knew the beach was. The bow scraped gravel, and I was out, dragging the kayak up onto the sand, not bothering to secure it. I grabbed my phone from the dry bag and started up the trail. It is a fire access road, overgrown but passable, winding through wet forest. I walked fast, almost jogging, my boots squelching in the mud. I did not look back. I did not hear the motor anymore, but I did not stop moving. The ranger station is a small brown building with a truck parked outside and a radio antenna on the roof. I reached it a little before 8. 2 rangers were inside, a man and a woman, both in green uniforms. I told them what happened. 2 men followed me across the lake in a boat. I do not feel safe going back to my truck alone. The woman asked if I knew them. I said no. She asked if they threatened me. I said no. But they photographed my license plate and then followed me in a boat for 30 minutes. The man asked if I was sure they were following me. I said yes. I am sure. They drove me back in their vehicle, a white truck with a Park Service logo on the door. It took 40 minutes to loop around the lake on forest roads. When we pulled into the boat launch, the blue or black pickup was gone. The lot was empty except for my truck. All 4 tires were slashed, not punctured. Slashed cleanly through the sidewalls, the rubber curled back like lips. The rangers got out and walked around my truck, taking pictures with a department camera. The woman radioed for a tow truck. The man asked if I had the plate number of the other vehicle. I did. I had memorized it while they were standing by my door. He wrote it down and radioed it in. We waited. The tow truck arrived an hour later. While the driver was loading my truck onto the flatbed, the male ranger came over and said the plate number came back to a salvage yard in Duluth that closed in 2019. No current registration, probably stolen plates. He said the launch does not have cameras. He said they would file a report, but without witnesses or video, there was not much they could do. He asked if I needed a ride somewhere. I said I would go with the tow truck. I sat in the cab while the driver hauled my truck 30 miles to a tire shop in town. I did not talk much. He asked what happened, and I said I did not know. 4 new tires cost me $700. I drove home that afternoon and have not been back to that lake. I still do not know what they wanted. I do not know if they were waiting for me specifically, or if I was just convenient. I do not know what would have happened if I had stayed on the water. Story number 3, lobby wait. I got back to my building around 9:30 at night. It had been raining since 6 and my coat was soaked through, even from the short walk from the train. I was thinking about my thesis deadline and whether I had any clean mugs left when I swiped my fob at the security door. Behind me someone said, "Hey, could you hold that?" I turned. A man in his 30s or 40s, wearing a gray jacket, holding a plastic bag from the Thai place 2 blocks over. He was standing close enough that I could see water dripping from his hood. "Forgot my fob upstairs," he said. He smiled, but not in a way that reached his eyes. Always do this when I order delivery. I hesitated. The door was already clicking open against my palm. I told myself it was fine. He had takeout. He knew there was a Thai place nearby. And he said, "Upstairs," which meant he knew the building layout. "Sure," I said and held it open. "Thanks." Tom's gonna kill me one of these days. He stepped through. Tom was the building manager. I'd only met him once during my walkthrough 2 months ago, but hearing the name made me relax a little. I told myself anyone could know the manager's name, but I didn't want to be the person who made a scene over nothing. We walked across the lobby together. The fluorescent lights made everything look greenish and too bright. Our shoes squeaked on the tile. He stayed a few steps behind me, not quite beside me, and I could hear the plastic bag rustling. The elevator was waiting. I stepped in and pressed 6. My floor. He stepped in behind me, and before I could move back to give him space, he reached forward and pressed 6 as well. I looked at the panel. Just the one button lit up now. "Oh," I said, "you're on 6 too." "Yeah." He didn't say which unit, didn't say anything else. The doors closed and the elevator lurched upward. It's an old building and the elevator is slow and loud, all grinding gears and rattling cables. The air inside felt thick and damp from our wet coats. His cologne was sharp, something chemical and sweet that caught in the back of my throat. He was standing close to the doors, not in the corner where people usually stand, just facing forward, holding his bag, not looking at me. I tried to remember if I'd ever seen him before. I didn't think so. But I'd only been here since August, and I mostly kept to myself. Maybe he worked nights. Maybe he was new too. The elevator shuddered to a stop, and the doors opened onto the 6th floor hallway. He stepped out immediately, before I could move, and I had to follow. The hallway was empty and too bright, the same greenish fluorescence as the lobby. Our building is shaped like an L, and my apartment is around the corner, halfway down the long side. I started walking. He walked behind me, not beside me, behind me. At the same distance he'd kept in the lobby. I slowed down a little, thinking he'd pass me or stop at his door. He slowed down too. My apartment was 612. I could see it ahead. I had my keys ready in my pocket. He still hadn't said anything. Hadn't turned toward any door. The takeout bag wasn't rustling anymore, and I realized he was holding it very still. I walked past 612 without looking at it. Didn't slow down, didn't reach for my keys. At the end of the hallway, there's a fire door that leads to the stairwell. I pushed through it and let it close behind me, then stood on the landing and listened. No footsteps, no door opening or closing, nothing. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking badly enough that I had to try twice to unlock it. I called the building management number that Tom had given me during the walkthrough. It rang 4 times before someone picked up, not Tom. A younger guy, maybe the night security. "Yeah. Hi, I'm in 612 and someone just followed me through the security door downstairs. He said he forgot his fob, but I don't think he lives here." "What's he look like?" 30s, maybe 40s. Gray jacket. He had takeout. "Where is he now?" "I don't know." I went into the stairwell. He was in the hallway on 6. There was a pause. I could hear him typing. "Okay. Stay in the stairwell. I'm sending someone up." I stayed on the landing. The stairwell was concrete and cold, and it smelled like dust and old paint. I could hear the building settling, pipes knocking somewhere below me. My coat was still dripping, and I was starting to shiver. I kept thinking about how he'd pressed 6. He'd done it fast, before I stepped back, like he already knew which floor. But I hadn't told him. And he hadn't looked at the panel first to see which button was lit. After what felt like a long time, my phone buzzed. A text from the management number. "Hallway clear. No unmatching description. Checked stairwells. You're good to go to your unit." I read it twice. Then I opened the stairwell door and looked out. The hallway was empty. All the doors were closed. The lights hummed overhead. I walked quickly to 612 and unlocked it, and went inside, and locked the door behind me, and put the chain on. Then I stood there, in the dark for a while, listening. Nothing. I told myself I'd overreacted. He probably lived on 6, and I just hadn't noticed him before. He probably went into his apartment while I was in the stairwell. The security guy probably just missed him. I took off my wet coat and made tea and tried to work on my thesis, but I kept getting up to check the peephole. The hallway stayed empty. The next morning someone knocked. I checked the peephole and saw Tom, the building manager, and a guy in a maintenance uniform. I opened the door. "Morning," Tom said. He looked uncomfortable. "Can we come in for a second?" "What's wrong?" "Just want to show you something." I let them in. The maintenance guy crouched down by the door frame and pointed. "See these marks?" he said. I looked. There were scratches in the paint around the lock, thin and fresh, the metal underneath showing through. "Those are pry marks," Tom said. "Someone tried to force your door. Maintenance does a monthly inspection, and these weren't here on Tuesday." "What?" "We checked the cameras," Tom said. "The guy you reported last night. He's not in the system. Doesn't live here. After you went into the stairwell, he stood in the hallway for 40 minutes. Just stood there, staring at your door. I felt something cold move through my chest. He left around 10:15, Tom continued. Took the stairs. We're filing a police report, and we're changing your locks today. And we're adding a camera on 6. The maintenance guy was still crouching by the door frame, running his finger along the scratches. 40 minutes, I said. Yeah. Tom looked at me. You did the right thing. Not going to your door. They changed the locks that afternoon. The police came and took a statement and said they'd check the cameras, but probably wouldn't find much. The guy on the phone said most of these cases don't go anywhere unless something actually happens. I still live here. It's been 3 weeks. I don't hold the door for anyone anymore, even if they're carrying takeout, even if they know Tom's name. And I take the stairs now, not the elevator. But sometimes when I'm coming home late, I think about him standing in the hallway. Just standing there in the fluorescent light. Waiting.